After 2 decades of steel and glass-fronted buildings, London is one of many cities around the world that has seen an increase in the use of colour in its built environment. Whilst building types such as schools and hospitals have long been using colour, particularly as an important part of their interior schemes, the last few years have seen this trend extend to other typologies, including social housing and even office buildings. But the biggest change is the migration of colour from an internal phenomena to the great outdoors, with bold splashes of colour springing up all over the city. One of the most vivid examples is Renzo Piano's recently completed office development in London's Camden Borough, central St Giles. The building is a marked departure from Piano's traditional palette of silvers, greys and whites. So what inspired the architect to make such a bold statement? And what did the public think of this colourful intervention?
London's constantly changing. London is not one architectural idea. Why not?
It's not fantastic.
Why do you say that?
Because it's purposefully bold, it's trying to be bold. I wouldn't say I hate it, but I wouldn't say I like it either.
Okay.
Yeah?
Right, colourful.
Why do you like it?
The colour, I think.
I think London needs a bit of colour.
The real inspiration came from Renzo walking around in the neighbourhood and seeing all different patches of colours, shops, small streets, mules and all that. And then we said, why not? To have some stronger colour, so that helps the presentation. And then we started looking at which colours, what kind of palette, because we had to find the kind of colour that would work well together. And how we came to the colour palette is we started off first with primary colours, and then we looked for a palette with natural colours. So these, although they are bold, they are natural colours with natural pigments. Right. And so with the manufacturer of the ceramic, we studied 30 different colours, and also in each colour different tones to get it right. So we did a lot of mock-ups and samples to get to this combination. So the client was quite enthusiastic about it. More difficult was the borough, so that they want to really be convinced that this was a good idea. In this particular building, there was a lot of negotiations with the neighbourhood, with all the people and owners around it. Then you have the council, so we have been do a lot of talking about it and explaining why we wanted to do it. And then we did mock-ups on site with the colours, and in the end they were convinced by it.
Another example of bold exterior colour is AHMM's Barking Central, a transformative development including social housing and a new library that has provided much needed regeneration for the area, revitalising the East End suburb.
From our point of view, there was this coincidence that we discovered that White's Lemonade were on the site over 100 years ago. That's where they used to produce the bottles of lemonade. And of course, everyone probably knows the tin with the yellow and green on it, and that tin became the touchstone for the first phase building, which goes from yellow to green, exactly as the tin does. At that point, we didn't make it obvious. The buildings weren't in any way, didn't let you know that there was a lemonade building on the side. That became part of phase 2, where the tower itself actually becomes called the lemonade building, so that people realise there's some history with Barking and the colours themselves. I suppose after that, the other buildings, we couldn't use yellow and green all the way through. We decided that it should relate to the arboretum that Muff Landscape Art were designing in the centre of the town, and that was I suppose was the main centrepiece of our new development. And because I suppose they were using a lot of different trees, from different continents, we felt that it was important, therefore, to sort of, I suppose, show the whole cross range of colours through nature, So it goes from the green all the way through to autumnal colours, and in a way that was the thing that harnessed the entire development together. But I think in the last few years we've toned down the way we might use it. I mean, the first phase of barking is the boldest use, the yellow and green building, and it's consequently slightly more diluted as you go through the second phases. And that was quite a deliberate act, really. We thought that the first building was a public building, had a library, and it was important to make it more exuberant as you go. And I'd also say that we always said to the leader of the council that when you drove along the A13, which is the main road past Barking, from the distance we wanted people to know that something had happened in Barking, that you could tell something had happened.
The use of colour for education buildings is perhaps less surprising, but dRMM's Clapham Manor Primary School is an intriguing example of the use of bold colour, particularly in the context of the school's quaint surroundings and historic listed buildings.
In terms of the application of colour at Clapham Manor, it wasn't part of the brief. There wasn't a desire to have a particular striking building in that regard. It's something that just evolved out of the process. We're looking at glass facades and glass technologies. I saw this amazing sample that had been made that had every single colour on it, and it just showed the opportunities that are available now in terms of glass technology. And that was kind of the departure point for the designs that emerged and developed over time. So we worked with this palette about having a whole series of colours through the spectrum, and in consultation with the school and the pupils developing different options, we developed a treatment which responded very closely to the contextual colours around the site. The rich reds with the terracotta, the Victorian board school, the yellows of the Oddfellows Hall, which is a listed building next door, coming into the greens and the blues around the back of the landscape. So the colour kind of developed through this colour spectrum, responding to the site, and then the colours are graduated as they climb up the building, very strong hues towards the base, and then becoming paler and whiter as they go towards the top, so you get more reflections of the sky, and the building kind of dematerialises as it rises up.
So are we looking at a new paradigm in the architectural use of colour? And if so, what are the factors driving this change in attitude?
I think the shift happened about 5 years ago, and I think in some ways it became a very positive move in architecture. It made buildings slightly more populist. In another way it became a very negative thing. It became a very easy thing for people to copy. So if you went round the Isle of Dogs and Docklands, you see an awful lot of buildings. Stratford High Street is another good example, that have these sort of quite colourful facades or colourful balconies. And I think that became a problem quite quickly. It was copied badly around lots of regeneration sites, and in some ways it could be seen as coding for regeneration. I think that's the negative side of it. The positive side is I think it has made buildings more populist. I think it has made people think harder about how you communicate buildings to the general public, how you individualise buildings, how you get away from the grey, silver buildings of the 70s and 60s, and in a way it's that part of the use of colour that our practice is interested in.
I think there's a emergence of more use of colour for educational work and social housing projects. It's a great opportunity to create a very strong identity to the building. Perhaps with the budget constraints, you're not able to select the types of materials that you might wish to, but you can have quite a standard material such as this one behind us. But through the use of colour, you can just transform the material, and the application of colour doesn't necessarily cost a lot more money. So you can create a very beautiful building through the use of colour, but still achieve the desires or the requirements for it to be very affordable.
With the advent of more durable and flexible materials, coupled with the technology to make such choices more affordable, more and more architects, and indeed clients, are daring to make bold statements with colour in our built environment. It may not be to everyone's taste, but technology is paving the way towards a bright and colourful future.